Education for a lot of us has always been instruction based in schools. That is where I think in B2B and B2G based businesses, I think that business is more about relationships. Right? It's absolute relationships. It took me 9 months to crack that relationship, but today all the chief executives of these companies, I'm personally sort of connected with them.
So how do you go from a project to a product to a company, right?
All the clubs come together there, and students can do any project that they like. Literally, the tagline is walk in with an idea, walk out with a product. Before you could actually capitalize on the opportunity, COVID hit. So there was something like this, and then we suddenly went to zero.
Yeah, I don't know what is it about the IIT Madras water, right? I mean that, people come out with such amazing things, right? I mean, we've had like startups as well, like a lot of startups emerged, right? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa. On this episode, we have Divanshu Kumar, who is the co-founder and CEO of Solinas. Solinas operates at the intersection of water and sanitation, and it's a robotics startup that was founded right out of campus in IIT Madras. Divanshu is an interesting guy. He started an education not-for-profit right out of college again, and he's been running this successfully for about 6 or 7 years. It facilitates peer-to-peer learning and impacts about 250,000 students across India. On this episode, however, I focus mainly about Solinas and talk to him about the various nuances of running a hardware startup. How does he iterate? How do you commercialize? How do you build with the customer and discover real practical use cases? What is it like working with the policymakers, working with the government, the support he has gotten from these various stakeholders, and other aspects of just building a hardware startup. We talk about, a vibe shift to manufacturing, hardware, robotics, AI, and so on. It is being led by bright young folks like Divanshu and his team who are solving some of the hardest challenges in India. This was a really inspiring conversation and also a ton of insights in here that you may find useful. So let's get started. Hey Divanshu, welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast.
Thank you.
So glad that you could make time for us.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome, man. I mean, I know this was weeks in preparation, right? I'm really glad that you are here at the studio with us.
And good to be in person, because otherwise you were thinking that it would be online.
Virtual and stuff.
Yeah.
In person is always the best. That's what we've realized over the course of the year at least. So I want to start at a different place, right? I mean, initially I had an idea of how this conversation will go, but based on, what we spoke on before we started recording, talk about, impacting education, right? I think that's something that you're deeply passionate about, right? Let's talk about that and then move into, deep tech and Solinas and all of the other stuff that people perhaps know you for, right? So how did it get started?
So I think a lot of my work in education came from where I was like sort of born and brought up in, which is like Gaya, Bihar, and was able to firsthand see the challenges of education there, right? I was part of the school where it was an English medium school, supposedly, an affordable private school, but we did not have an English teacher for like 6-8 months, right? So very poor English from that standard. And I remember like in 9th grade, when I actually shifted schools, I ended up failing in English, which was like, I think by far the only failure like that I've had in academics. So it was like that was the case of education earlier. And fortunately, when I ended up making it to IIT Madras, always had this inclination that education needs to be better, and had been teaching since my 10th grade. So had a interest in like sort of talking to students and so on. And in IIT, I was a part of this organization called Avanti Fellows. Like a couple of IIT Bombay and Harvard graduates came together to start this, where we as IIT Madras students used to go to Pondicherry in a Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya to sort of, get them to prepare for JEE. And I was involved there for a couple of years. And in one of the years when I was a part of the leadership, we were able to get 100% of the kids into JEE mains, which was a huge success ratio then. And it still continues to be today. So we felt that there was something that we did better during that year. And one of the things that I had actually implemented with the students was peer learning, where we got the 12th graders to teach the 11th graders. And we also had some of the students at IITM take proper 3-year classrooms there. So I and my Samyak, who is now the co-founder of Involve now, we were having this discussion that if this has worked here, can it also work in schools? Because schools was something that I really wanted to do something about, and that really sort of is how we came into education and started the first organization. Right. So my stint in entrepreneurship started when I completed my second year in college, and that was the first organization. Look, Involve was founded then. Of course, it started as a project first, and then after 1 year, we got it into a company, went on building a team, and so on. So that was there, and the whole philosophy was that education for a lot of us has always been instruction based in schools. That as a student, you don't have any choice. You just go to the school, you listen to the teacher, you do ABC, and then you come back. Absolutely have no idea why you are doing this. What is the value of that you will generate sort of post school? We said that if really we have to change education, we need to work at the fundamentals, and we need to get the students engaged in that why. Right. So that's where the whole pedagogy of peer-based learning came in. And we said that if we are able to create an ecosystem where students are able to learn from each other, a lot of the things like intrinsic motivation, leadership, and all of this will uptake for these students. And that's what will change them in the long run. So that is how the whole thing started. Today, like Involve works with about 250,000 students across 6 states. Wow. And we have a very strong sort of learning center and like learning and implementation in Bangalore with about 50-60 schools that we have partnered with. And apart from that, we work directly at a policy level with districts, and we are also trying to get states. The larger idea is that how can we influence the education system itself to be able to become more child-centric, more collaborative, and influence that sense of agency in students, that if I am a part of the education system, I also have an ability to influence things, and that I can take charge of my own learning. So that is the whole education work that started like second year of college.
Amazing. And yeah, I mean, started it in second year of college and like still running it, right? Fantastic stuff. Yeah. So I mean, education is such a big part, right? I mean, we see movies like Super 30 or 12th Fail and so on, and they kind of really inspire us because we've seen, at least we've heard of like these stories in real life where, you know, someone's social circumstances changed because they cracked an exam and so on and so forth. And perhaps the biggest like driver of social mobility, right? So yeah, fantastic. And
I think we've also seen that thing that, right, like if some of the students we are able to actually influence that sense of change,
their whole
just
family
changes the whole thing. Yeah. I just wanted to give a couple of examples where in like some of these very remote tribal villages, we have been able to get the like girl students to influence so much that they're able to go back to their parents and say that I don't want to get married early. I don't want to, I want to come back to school. I don't want to drop out, because a lot of times the girl dropout in these villages is very, very high. So they're able to negotiate with their parents that education is important for us. And because we follow this model of peer teaching, where we have the senior kids teaching the juniors, when the girl students actually teach their juniors, they realize that they have a career path that they can pursue very well and that they can be independent. So it just changes the way that they think about their whole life.
Yeah. I think it's also like a very natural way that all of us learn and imbibe knowledge, right? In general, I feel like, you know, each of us has perhaps like learned from, you know, people's notes, right? Seniors' notes, etc., that get passed on, right? Or you have, you know, a smart classmate, etc., who you ask all these doubts to, right? I mean, I think definitely in terms of a model that feels like a lot more natural, sustainable, and so on, right? We could do a whole podcast talking to you about education and the kind of impact that you've had, but yeah, I don't know what is it about the IIT Madras water, right? I mean, that, you know, people come out with such amazing things, right? I mean, we've had like startups as well, like a lot of startups emerge, right? Zetwork, Off Business, and a bunch of deep tech folks also.
Aether.
Aether, of course, right? What is it about IIT Madras that kind of spurs this kind of, you know, entrepreneurship spirit in people?
I think so. One is, of course, the independence that you get at all the IITs to pursue certain things. And that's why a lot of startups have been able to come out of that. But specifically, I think about deep tech, if I talk about IIT Madras, the whole ecosystem that we have there, which is from the lens of innovation, tinkering, and so on, is really great. So actually, to put things into perspective, we have a center called Center for Innovation. is completely student led. It was like sort of founded by the batch of 2006, I guess, where they gave a shed where all the tinkering materials are available. All the clubs come together there, and students can do any project that they like. Literally, the
Amazing.
tagline is walk in with an idea, walk out with a product. And you would see students there till like 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, just like building products, right? So that is one aspect of like them being actually doing product development, which is missing from a lot of like sort of technology institutes, right? And from there they end up getting this idea that okay, there is a commercial viability, so we can mold that into a startup. And the moment they start thinking about this, there are peer incubation centers like Nirman. There is something called GDC for entrepreneurship across the way to sort of incubation cell, which is very very active for deep tech. I'll also talk about this, like, so for example, Nirman, I don't know what the current policy is, but during my time they had this thing that up to 2 lakh rupees you can invest in a project that you think is commercially viable, and they won't ask for anything in return. So if you have a product which you feel that can go to the market and you can build a startup out of that, you can continue to fund it through Nirman money, which is up to 2 lakh rupees, completely uncapped. You can do it for anything that you like. And after that, if you feel like that, no, this startup is not for me and I won't be able to do this, no questions asked. So they're okay with that, right? That kind of risk-taking ability that they provide also enables you to sort of just take that chance, right? And that, I think, has helped a lot of people sort of go into
Reduces the
entrepreneurship.
costs of
Yes.
doing something on your own.
And enables that, right?
Right.
They push you to think about that.
Right.
It's not a lot of places people inhibit you from doing things. Here it is exactly the opposite.
Right.
So I think these are a couple of things that have happened very well.
But still, I mean, when you talk about someone like graduating from IIT Madras and so on, right, a premier IIT at that, there is this expectation, right? I mean, that you will get into a job, you will earn a hefty paycheck and so on, right? And you will improve like your circumstances and so on, right? How do you fight that and say that, no, I'm going to do something in education, which is a not-profit, by the way, and then I'm going to start something in deep tech, right? Which again, there's not too much of a precedence.
So I think just to set the record, I think I still feel personally that the percentage of people doing entrepreneurship in college, like even IITs, is much less.
Yeah.
Like the number needs to really double down at
Absolutely.
least, right?
Yeah.
So that I still feel that there's a lot of scope for improvement. But having said that, I understand that it still sort of is a road not taken generally for people, right? A couple of things on that. I think one is, I have always felt that personally for me, this is the best time to take risk. And so one of the things that I do is I've now when the business has taken off, I seldom go to like sort of talks. But if there's an opportunity for me to really talk to a college student, like IIT Delhi recently, I went to IIT Dharwad, I went to, I don't miss that opportunity, because I feel that when you are in the final year or pre-final year, you absolutely can try doing things without having any risk of failure. ज़्यादा क्या होगा? Like, you will work on something for 6 months, you'll realize that it's not for you. You'll just shut it down, right? And you can still go to placement saying that I did a failed startup. So win-win, like net, right? So from that angle, I think I personally feel that you absolutely don't have any risk in college to try out something there. So that's how we got into education, right? And the thought process when I and Samyak were discussing letting go placements, we had this conversation saying that, which again IIT something provides, and a lot of other IITs do that, and BITS Plani also I think started doing that, is that you can push your placement by 1 year. So if you don't want to get placed in your final year, you can push that by 1 more year, and you can try doing something that you want to, which is a great enabler again.
Right.
So I and Samyak said that, okay, let's do involve full time. We'll have some milestones, and if we feel that we have not met those milestones, we'll come back and look for a job. But at least let's do that. So fortunately that we did not come to that. So that was one thing that we were able to do, which was personally for me. And second thing which worked out very well for us is that I realized that in your early sort of 20s or late 20s, the requirement of cash is not very high, because
you can live on nothing,
exactly, right?
basically.
Yeah. So I was like, as long as I'm able to make 20K out of what I'm doing, where I can have a like sort of place and food,
Right.
I'm good with that. So and that's the way that both of us thought about that 4 to 5 year horizon. Basic expense covered out. As long as we are able to have this, we are able to learn a lot, we are able to have fun, we'll do that. So that was like, so non-negotiables for us. So we were like, as long as these non-negotiables are met,
Right.
then we can do anything we wanted.
Right.
Right. So that is how the decision to do full time at Involve. And Involve was doing great, right? Within college, I'll tell a funny story also. When we were registering Involve as an organization, we registered it for Delhi, thinking that after 1.5 years, we anyway don't want to live in Chennai. We'll go back to Delhi and sort of build the organization there.
Right.
But within 1.5 years, we had done so much. We were already present in about like 50-60 schools. We had a team of 10 people on board that we were like, yaar, ab to Delhi जाने का कोई sense नहीं है, because the organization is now based here. So that growth happened and we were able to see that. Now, fortunately, I would say now that in final year of college, we have to do a project, right? And I was a dual degree student, where in dual degree in IIT Madras is where you do bachelor's and master's together. And I was able to finish my coursework in 4 years itself. So the entire final year, I only had my project to do. Initially, the thing was that I would do the project to the bare minimum so that I can focus on Involve and continue to grow that. But just that the problem that I got interested in that. So I went to the professor and said that I wanted to do something impactful. And Dr. Prabhu Rajgopal, who is also my co-founder at Solinas now, he said that there is a problem that I have, which is a couple of people have come to me saying that people are dying in sewer lines and septic tanks. We can develop a technology solution for that. So would you want to take a chance? I said, okay, sounds good. Let's try to do that. So ended up developing a prototype for it. And the idea was that do something for 3 to 2 months as a college project, park it, focus on Involve, right? So made a prototype. In 3 months, I said that project is done now, chill. Presented to the faculty, they felt कि ठीक है, ठीक ठाक काम हो गया था, so all was good. Then we had a chance to present our technology to a group of manual scavengers. There's a Safai Karamcharis who actually are engaged in this work. And I said, ठीक है, मतलब let's present that. I do not know Tamil, right? So I had a colleague who ended up presenting. But I could see from the crowd of all the Safai Karamcharis who were there that they were absolutely not thrilled. And in fact, one of the person there in Tamil said that he started laughing. And he said, ki, this is a toy. Do you think that this solves our problem?
Right.
And I was like hurt. I was like, Arey, I am like coming from IIT.
Dil pe le liya.
And I'm like, how can you say this, right? Not that I had put a lot of like sort of heart and soul into that,
Right.
but it still took a like sort of pinch to my ego. कि भाई ऐसे कैसे बोल रहा है? And then he said that, have you even seen the conditions in which we sort of clean it, right? And the reality was that I had not. So I said, okay, let's try to understand. Let's see where they're coming from. So ended up actually visiting one of the sites midnight, because in daytime you can't do it. And I was like shocked, right?
Yeah.
I was like, boss, this shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
This by any means this shouldn't happen. They have to get completely drunk when they go inside. The entire hair, the kind of like sort of the toll that it takes on the skin, the entire like mind, and of course the death risk that is there. Said, ठीक है, मतलब at least like honest try तो बनता है इसका. That the remaining 9 months that I have, let's try to do that. So that is how sort of ended up doing that, and then realized कि ठीक है, इसको commercialize करना है, take it to the market. So the deep tech journey started. So it wasn't in mind कि Involve के बाद कुछ और करना है. Involve was supposed to be the thing that I do, but just like turn of events happened in the way that ended up like sort of going towards that.
I mean, classic, right? You found a problem so compelling that you wanted to solve it, right? You couldn't do anything else about it. And manual scavenging. I think there are few things in the world as like really terrible as that, right? I mean, it's So to that end, I think what you're doing is like phenomenal stuff, right? I mean, you're helping these.
We're trying to do.
Well, that's a noble start, I would say, at least, right? So how do you go from a project to a product to a company, right? I mean, because I'm sure that, it's not a very linear path.
No, absolutely not, yeah.
You make one and then you do 10 and then go on and so forth, right? I mean, it's not like a very linear thing. I'm sure there are leaps of learning in each of these things, right? For instance, you would have had to think of use cases, right?
Yeah.
So you came up with, let's say, Endobot and Homosep and your Swasth and all of that. Or even on the business side of things, you would have had to think, chalo, what is the product price range that I should think of?
Correct.
So on and so forth. There's so many things, right? So how do you develop these things as, someone who's just graduating?
So I think in some sense I got lucky because, and some at a disadvantage also, because there's not much precedence of somebody right out of college building a business for the government. right? Because especially in these legacy industries or customers like government or B2B, you need a certain set of expertise and experience to go there. Like they like the gray hair that you have. For a 21-year-old to go there and say ki what your technology you have is outdated and let me sort of help you for that.
Yeah.
So right. So that of course is there but I'll come to that. The journey of how we went from prototype or like sort of project to product and then to enterprise actually was very sort of
Zigzag.
Yeah, zigzag. Because so 9 months when I said that okay, let's take a shot at building the product, 9 months like sort of went completely into this and was able to develop a prototype that the same group said ki theek hai, this sounds doable. And couple of also like
What was that feeling like, right? I mean, the same people who had
Yeah.
laughed at your toy, so to speak, right? Saying that, okay, this can actually work.
That essentially was the step factor to motivate and say, let's do something further, right? And I'll be honest, like a couple of other things also happened that boosted a lot of that pride. We were able to win a couple of national competitions,
Awesome.
got awarded by Honorable Prime Minister, and we were like, chalo yaar, theek hai, acha lag raha hai, right? So we said ki let's try to sort of build that into a product and see whether it works. We actually had a couple of other folks who were working on similar technologies, and we said ki theek hai, sounds good to start it full time, right? So that's how Solinas came into being. But before you could actually capitalize on the opportunity, COVID hit. So there was something like this, and then we suddenly went to zero because we are not software, right?
Right, everything is
cannot
outdoor.
work from home.
Yeah.
It's a prototyping. Like people have to come together to figure
Correct.
things out. But the fact that everybody went back to their homes really sort of pulled things down for us. So we had a couple of folks. We said, okay, let's come together and at least work to the extent of design that when we come back, we're able to work on things. Right. So that was a very challenging time. We actually did not know whether we would make it to the next stage. We had not raised enough funding. There was some like sort of angel funding that had come in just before, but very, very less. So ऐसे exhaust हो गया था. And we did not have a market ready product till then. And the cost of making had gone high because you had a set of people who were working with you full time, but the productivity was not that great because everybody was working from home.
Right.
उनको निकाल तो सकते नहीं है. So we actually had to sort of put the team together. So that is how that was the sort of phase. And then we came back, I think around September, full time, like all of us together. And then we said, what do we want to do, right? We have to like really figure things out. And that's how we went, okay, let's rewind. We were able to sort of gather a small set of people. And we said, okay, let's push things together now. तो वहाँ से फिर actual product development का journey शुरू हुआ. Like earlier it was more like So वहाँ से फिर started doing products. And the thing about also products for these segments is that the kind of silver lining is that you don't need a very finished product. जैसे consumer market में if you are building something, you need a very good design.
Yeah,
finishing.
So typically we say that it has to be 10x better than whatever they're using currently. But आपके instance में, I mean, there's nothing like it.
Like that, yeah, exactly. और उसमें भी क्या था कि people don't focus a lot on aesthetics. They want functionality. Like to a larger extent, right? So वहाँ पर था, and that time we had the other product Endobot also coming in for pipeline diagnostics, right? So we had one product which was for pipeline diagnostics, and we were primarily focusing on a set of pipelines which were 200 mm and above, which we now realized after some time that it had a very limited use case. And then we had HomoStep for cleaning, right? So we got a couple of pilot orders that we were executing. And we realized that
these orders were from the government, basically.
Yeah, but we had one semi-private also. Like we had a contract from Mahindra World City that we were able to get. So what happens in our business, I'll explain the business also a bit now for Solinas, right? So for Solinas, we are developing technologies that solve for asset management in these water and sanitation segment, right? So all the utilities have water pipelines, sewer pipelines, drainages, manholes, septic tanks.
Right.
All of this, STPs. So all of this is something that we do diagnostics and cleaning. And now that we are doing software, we do end-to-end AI-based management also for them, right? So that is the common goal that we are working on. Now, with the first products that we started, we essentially went from diagnostics of pipelines and the cleaning of septic tanks. This was like what we started with, right? And then the first few customers that we got, we realized that, okay, one, government is the customer, but also there are places where the large real estates are there which are managed privately. So the Mahindra was there, right? Mahindra has a city
like a
cross-
township kind of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
So they had engaged us to do diagnostics of their sewer network, right? And that's where a very good lesson I learned. So what had happened was we had promised them that we'll do the diagnostics through robots, right? And but our robots did not work. Like after
Wait,
5
how
meters,
did they discover you in the first place?
something that I think they reached out to IITM, one of the innovation center, which was ICCW, International Center for Clean Water. And Nanda Kumar sir, who is the CEO there, he knew us. So he said, do you guys want to do the job? Small job, right? And we were supposed to do the diagnostics of the sewer networks, right? Our robots did not work beyond 5 meters. ठीक है तो उसके बाद हमने कुछ जुगाड़ solution we used and we tried to finish the job. And I was actually quite like sort of afraid that they would not pay us, right? But the moment we finished the length and they ended up paying us, so I was quite surprised. So I went to their operations head and I asked him कि we promised that we will do it through robotics, but आपने हमें तो जुगाड़ करना पड़ा to finish the job. So why did you still pay us and you did not like create a fuss? He said, boss, I don't care whether it is robotics or something else. I needed insights about my pipelines. I got it. Like job done. And that was a very important learning for me, right? That technology and business are two very different things. You can create a very sexy technology, but if
Very
it doesn't
important.
solve the problem of the customer,
Great point.
they're not going to buy it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you have a decently working product, but if it solves their problem, that's good. That's very good to start with. Like, of course, you have to iterate.
Basically, technology is a means to an end. Basically.
Exactly. That's a means to an end. It gives you leverage, but it cannot be the only thing that you build off for.
You can't sell technology, basically.
Yes. It has to solve a tangible problem to customer.
Has
It has
to
to
be a
essentially,
solution.
it has to either solve for their time.
Right.
It has to give them returns on money or the headache that they take on, like the overall pain. Somewhere it has to solve for that. It cannot be just because, oh, technology is great, let me adopt it. नहीं होगा वो. So that was a very, very big learning for us. So then we realized कि ठीक है, we will do R&D, but first our R&D will be informed by the customer problems. And two, the moment we are able to come up with a prototype, we'll try to find a partner who understands that early prototyping को implement करना चाहिए. So even if you fail, they're not going to say, "Yeah, next time I'll not give you a contract." But they understand that implementing a prototype is a learning journey because you need real life simulation, right? If I have to build a product that cleans manholes, I cannot just build it by cleaning a like artificial system. I need to have it in the manhole. Right. So that was a very strong learning journey that we took from there. So इसलिए अभी a good thing that has been in the R&D team now is that in 9 to 12 months we are able to ship out a product because we understand that early prototyping and learning journey.
Yeah.
That has been great. So we did that. So I think we did Mahindra City somewhere around like September to December 2020. And from then onwards, we had Homosip was still under sort of development. Endobot had come out faster. So we had Endobot being in the market, couple of clients. That's when we realized that, and I say this even now, that if we were building Solinas about 1 or 2 decades earlier, we would not have been anywhere near successful today because penetrating government early on is very difficult. The reason why we were able to grow is because we figured out there were private operators who were taking operations and maintenance contract from the government. So for example, company like Suez, Veolia, L&T, they take the entire contract of the city, right? And when you are selling to them, that is very clear. It's of course a bit challenging that you go to them and you prove that you're metal, but at least if they find value, they'll give you a contract. So it took me about 9 to 10 months to convert Suez, but since then Suez has been one of our greatest customers. Like they gave us visibility. Our first contract in Coimbatore, we have continued that contract since 2.5 years now. We are now we expanded last year to Mangalore. We're expanding to Lucknow.
You're basically growing with them.
Yeah, growing with them. Exactly, right. And based on their sort of reputation, we were able to get to Veolia, L&T and whatnot. So that was a very good thing. That's one thing that we figured out. And, that is where I think in B2B and B2G based businesses, I think that business is more about relationships. Right? It's absolute relationships. It took me 9 months to crack that relationship. But today, all the chief executives of these companies, I'm personally sort of connected with them because they know that the value that we're creating and that we can work together with them, right? So that was one major chunk of how we were able to get into business. And then slowly, because we had time and we were having sort of revenue kicking in, we were able to experiment with government also because we realized that despite private operators being there, a major volume of our business will still come from governments, right? So B2B2G players like Veolia, Suez and all of that, the government, of course, is a major customer. And then very recently, last year, when we were working, we got a call from Pfizer, right, to do audit of their underground sewer networks. And that's when it clicked us that any industry with a sizable real estate would also have their privately managed sewer network, drainage systems, and so on, that they would need to audit, clean, or check for. Right? So in some of the industry, there is ISO requirement also from an audit point of view. So that's when we realized that there's an entirely new industry that we can sort of disrupt with our entire set of diagnostics and cleaning solutions, right? And this was a very key learning for us that also has like sort of now very well in the way that we can grow ourselves. We realized that we are one of the very few companies across the world who understand the intersection of water sanitation together. So with our pipelines, we do water, sewer, drainage, all three. So we can do as small as 90 mm of pipelines, all the way up to 2100 mm of pipelines. Like very few companies across the world do that. We do diagnostics, we do cleaning, and now with Swasth AI, we are able to do a entire analytics-based, prediction-based solutions also, right? So the whole gamut of solutions that we provide, there's a very strong stickiness with the customer because they have one sort of partner or a vendor who can solve for multiple problems for them. And any B2B or B2G based customer likes that. They don't want to go to like sort of 10 other companies.
15 different companies for...
They have one partner, they know that you can execute, take other contracts as well. So that has enabled us to now not just increase our stickiness with the customer, but also give us more ticket size. So this has really sort of worked out well for us.
Awesome. So I want to very briefly summarize like some of the points that you mentioned, right? So one is like talk to your customers and let their problem sort of inform your R&D, right? Don't start the other way around. Don't do the R&D first and then take it to customers. That's the first thing, right? Second thing is preferably sign up someone for a prototype implementation because whatever you're building, you have to sort of deploy it in a real world scenario and prove your mettle, right? And of course, it hedges you from a investment perspective also. And third thing, I think, particularly, for entrepreneurs who are more on the tech side of things, relationships, right? Relationships are like super valuable, right? Really invest in relationships. And I think like a fourth would be that use cases start to develop as you like go deeper into a domain, right? Like you will discover adjacents that you perhaps might not have thought of, right?
Absolutely.
The one nuance to your business is, or one big nuance to your business is the hardware aspect of things, right? And what we see is that, hardware is not as easy to iterate as software, right? Has a bunch of challenges in terms of costs being front loaded. You have to put up that money before you make that machine, right? Raising money is not a straightforward thing, super difficult, right? Finding talent is again very difficult, right? So how do you manage hardware, this whole aspect of hardware?
So I think on a very personal front, I think you have to be passionate about it. Like that is the first requirement, right? As an entrepreneur, if you are not attached to the problem, hardware is not like the right thing for you because like you said, right, for multiple reasons mentioned, it always keeps you one step behind in terms of what you can build with the same talent if you deploy it at other place, right? The challenge of like cost, investment ecosystem, talent availability, and so on. So one I think at the personal level is that you have to be passionate about the problem, right? And so that's something that was there. Other aspects I think we have found a couple of things that we were able to solve for. So for example, like I mentioned, when you're building prototypes, it is very, very important from the day one that you think about implementation. You cannot build a best product and thing before you deploy with the customers, right? And I think somebody said this also, that if you think that you have arrived at the best product, you have already sort of, gone on the right direction.
You capped your innovation, basically.
So we were very clear that we will build as a prototype and we will deploy. And then we will see if there is a customer who is willing to pay us, right? Because it hedges the bets on two cents. One, then if they're paying you a bit, at least some cost gets covered with that. And two, the markets also realize that you have some product market fit there, right? So that was something that we did very, very well. Other thing that and again, product of the ecosystem there, that we were able to get some early grants to develop. So we did not use an investor's money to do the lot of early product development. And that really sort of worked in our favor, because by the time we actually went to the market to raise investment, we said that, see, there are few working customers. We have a product that works. right? And there is this potential. So it was easier for them to take a bet on that. Computer saying कुछ भी नहीं है बस idea है and the entire couple of crores are going to get into product development, right? That's a very risky bet on that sense, right? Third, on the talent, I think a couple of things we have done on that. One, we have relied a lot on tier 2 and tier 3 cities talent, right? Where people have this fire in the belly to really prove something and they want to do, and they're okay with like hustling with like sort of their hands, right? It's not just like click 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 develop a software, but they're okay with getting their hands dirty. And I think that has helped us a lot in terms of like talent retention and getting the right people on board.
Yeah,
some of the engineers that we have are truly like amazing, right? Manufacturing team, operations, like engineering, great talent, right?
Amazing.
All of these youngsters. So that is one. Second, I think somehow helps that we are in Chennai because still the whole startup as a very sexy thing has not the same thing that is there in Bangalore is not there yet in Chennai, right? So people are okay with sort of working in a sort of hardware company, and it also helps in some way that we have a very strong social impact associated with it.
Right.
So people are like, okay, I'm doing hardware, I'm working a bit harder, but the impact is very sort of right. The mission is something that I can actually work towards. So that creates a sense of satisfaction also in them. And we have like sort of prioritized this communication right from day one. So I've said that, guys, every company that you can go, you will be able to learn. Like startups are for learning, right? You will be able to hustle. But always remember that the effort that you're putting here today solves a very real problem, solves a very burning problem, right? So every time that our products get deployed in the market, in the city, whether it for water or sewerage, you are saving lives, you are improving the health of people, and you are actually improving the assets that we have for the country. So to give an example on that, when we work in water, couple of cities, we have actually reduced the water contamination of the city. We have been able to provide water, look for blockages where water was not coming for like 12, 18 months. That's real impact. And at a scale of a city, right? So that when people see it, and that consistent communication with them helps us, really retain that talent. So these are things, but having said all of that, it's still a kind of a challenging game to build hardware.
Right. No, but I do sense a bit of a vibe shift to manufacturing and hardware, right? I mean, we've had like hardware startups on the podcast and we've tried to focus more on that off late, right? We've had Orangewood, Ethereal Machines, and a few others as well, right? And one thing I see is that now, especially now, I mean, people are sort of open to hardware, right? I mean, otherwise this was not the case earlier, I would say, right? Some of these challenges that you solve are like really technically hard, right? Really hard problems, right? Can you give us a glimpse of like a few things that you've had to get your robots to do that were really technically hard and, somehow you guys like found a way out?
So I think I'll talk about the previous point also a bit, where you said that the ecosystem is now sort of coming up, right? I see that also as a shift because at least when you're doing hardware, there is cash flow, right? So from an investment point of view, once you have achieved a product market fit, the likelihood of risk comparatively reduces, because like compared to software where you would like sort of earnings would be seen at after a long time when you have sizable customers. There, with every customer that you add, you have sizable cash flow. Your unit economics are very solid.
Your margins
are big. Yeah, margins are good. So from that perspective, now investors have there are like specific investors, especially in climate and deep tech, people are able to take those risks. So I think grateful for that ecosystem change, even slow, but kind of sort of helpful. Now, going back to the other thing that you were saying about solving some difficult problems, a lot of them, I think there was a place where we had to do sewer line inspection, which was, I think, 12 or 15 meters deep and flowing situation in the sewer, that actually the robots can actually sort of completely get flown. वो फिर निकल जाएगा, वो इतना फ्लो चल रहा है सीवर का कि वो निकल जाएगा. So that was one of the very challenging situations. We actually had to figure out a way, because what happens na, कि in these kind of situations, just product alone will not solve for things. you need to have supporting solutions as sort of accessories to be able to solve that problem. Because ऐसे if you say that okay, there is a robot, there is a pipeline, it goes inside, it diagnoses for things, but the situation in which this pipeline is there is very challenging. Some of the situations the pipeline could be just 1 meter deep, some cases it is 10 meter deep, some cases the pipeline would be empty, in some cases it is flowing continuously. There was one place similarly where we were doing a pipeline inspection, and that was actually the pipeline was flowing across the river, right? So our team had to go in the middle of the river on the bridge and put the robot down vertically. और वो भी robots are also heavy, right? तो थोड़ा भी इधर उधर हुआ तो टक के यार कैमरा पर टूट जाएगा, मतलब you have those risks. तो काफ़ी stability के साथ we had to like sort of put that robot down, ensure that it goes in the right way, and then it did the inspection. Very subtly we were able to sort of do all of those things.
Right.
So getting insights on those fronts were really, really difficult. So that is on the sort of diagnostic side. Couple of places I think where cleaning has been very difficult in the sense, I'll give you one example. Generally क्या होता है कि इंडिया में predictive ways cleaning कोई नहीं करता है. Only when the challenge like goes above the head, then people are like अच्छा इसको clean करना है अभी.
Right.
तो there was one place where we were cleaning the sewer lines. It was completely choked. Like choked to the extent where वो ठोस बन गया था, solid, like the silt and everything, right? And we had to deploy our homocept to like sort of churn the whole thing out. And initially it felt like it hit a solid, like wood.
Right.
We did not expect the sludge to be that way. Fortunately, थोड़ा मोड़ा मतलब when we put water there, थोड़ा सा मतलब soften हुआ, and we had like designed the blades to be sort of much stronger than what general requirement is, so it was able to like sort of strike through. Like I have a couple of videos where we have actually seen that sludge जो से water sort of wall से चिपका हुआ है, after a lot of vegetation 10-15 minutes के बाद वो धीरे धीरे ऐसे wall से निकल करके फिर the data is getting mixed, right? And then we were able to suck it out. So I think the reason also challenges are sort of high there because everything is underground. Like you don't know what is the condition of your asset till you actually visualize. Right? होता क्या generally, let's say, and the reason why these problems can kind of continue coming, let's say sewer line, right? Now sewer line, every 30 meters there is a manhole. Now what generally people do is when the manhole starts flowing, they clean up the manhole, right?
Right.
But the problem is actually in the horizontal part of the pipeline. So होगा क्या कि even if though you have cleaned the manhole, again it will get choked. Now because you don't have a system that can diagnose inside the pipeline कि कहाँ पर exact problem है, you are actually not solving the problem. You are just delaying it. Right? तो जब हम लोग उसमें फिर finally मतलब diagnostics करते हैं, we send the robots and then we realize कि भाई ये तो क्या system है. Right. I have looked into water pipelines in sense where after looking into it you will never again drink from like sort of tap, right? There are a couple of places where, and like I don't think if there is anybody to blame, it's just that we have to improve the systems consistently, right? There are places where because pipeline had a small crack, because of that inward pressure in the pipeline, water pipeline, insects were germinating. Okay? And India has this specific thing of intermittent water supply, where you don't get water 24/7, right? And because of that, what happens is वो बोलते हैं ना, पहले हम लोग सोचते थे कि यार US में डायरेक्टली नल से पानी मिल सकता है, but इंडिया में नहीं कर सकते वो, right? It is because when the water is not flowing continuously, there is a good chance of contamination happening in the pipeline because of inward pressure. तो क्या होता था कि for the 20 hours that water was not getting supplied, because of that crack, insects were germinating inside the pipeline. And then the 4 hours that it would come, the water would flush it through the insects and the water would actually be completely contaminated. So that part of the city was actually having a lot of health issues. And people were not able to identify because it was just a crack. It was not really a big leak that it would be visible outside of the surface. So only when we deployed the robot, we realized here is crack ke karan insects are actually germinating there.
Right.
So it took us a long time to figure out what the problem was.
Right.
But ultimately when we were able to do it, we were very, very happy.
Yeah. No, I mean, aside from, these hardware technical issues that you not necessarily solve through, let's say, hardware innovation itself, I mean, the key is to look at other aspects that can help, the overall innovation, right? I mean, whether it is perhaps like, adding water to sort of clean the sludge a little bit, make it dilute it a little bit, or positioning the robot in such a way that it's properly like, properly captures things, right? I think the other big challenge on the product front would be that you've had to build a lot of stuff on the software side from first principles, right?
Yes.
It's not like you're building the nth product in something that you have like existing libraries and APIs and this and that you can leverage, right? So you have to think through all aspects of it, right from infrastructure, security, and so on and so forth, right? But the good thing is that I think you can at some point like standalone make this a SaaS software of sorts, right?
Yeah, I think so. Because you mentioned about this, one of the principles that we follow at Solinas also is first principles, right? Don't expect that something has already been there and that you can just incrementally build on that. So, because even though there is a solution that, let's say, exists in the Western part of the world, you cannot just copy it and replicate it here. It doesn't work because your ecosystem is not the same as it was there, right? The pipeline condition, the infrastructure is not the same. So first principle is like a very fundamental thing that we follow for us. Now, of course, each aspect you can have its own disadvantage in terms of building, but the advantage is that you're the first mover in that. You actually have a set of information. So for when we were our journey in software started when a lot of customers came back to us and they said that through the robots you're able to solve the problem of today, but do I get any insights about the future, right? And we realized, yeah, that's true. Like for a systemic asset where let's say a city has 2,000, 3,000 kilometers of pipeline network, thousands and hundreds of thousands of manholes, how do you help them assess about the future through what you're doing in the present? Like, can you leverage AI to think about how the pipeline are degrading? Can you help them predict things based on the historical map of the city, right? Based on the digitization of the pipelines that you are doing. So from that angle, we started developing the software, right? And in that way, yes, the AI models that we are developing right now, we had to start from the scratch. But the good part was that because we already had the hardware and we had like sort of kilometers of pipeline data with us, we were able to run those AI to improve the accuracy of our algorithm, right? So that really helped that we transitioned from a hardware company to being now doing software as well, rather than standing off alone as only software, right? So that really helped because our journey went again always informed from what the customer wanted and then implementing the same.
Interesting. So you can basically take the data from somewhere else if required, right? And then crunch it, analyze it, and also like show it in the form of a dashboard or report and so on.
And the other thing also that helped us is from a business point of view, that because we already had customers accepting our hardware or using our hardware, when we went to them with saying that this is a software that we have developed, we did not have to go through the same cycle of customer acquisition that we did 3 years back when we were launching our first products. So this really kind of helped us a lot in that framework.
Right. So there are really two different types of businesses that you run, right? So one is the hardware aspect or the product aspect of things, and then is the services, right? Services kind of make sense because you don't want, not everyone would be willing to pay the 5 or 10 lakhs or 15 lakhs upfront, right? They just want it to be cleaned periodically, right? But I don't know how like you can think through both of these aspects because I feel like they are divergent sort of businesses, right? So how do you kind of train and adapt your mind into thinking like how hardware has to or product has to run this way and software has to run this way?
So I think very honestly, we're at a very learning phase of this, very early phase of this, because as an industry itself, we are like sort of early entrants into the market. And of course, with the new technologies that we're developing, let's say software for asset management in water and sanitation, उसका कोई market ही नहीं था अभी तक. Like we just couple of companies in the West have sort of started coming up with AI products, but India में वैसा कोई मतलब sort of reference is not there. So hence, I think what we have kept as our true north is focus on solving the problem of the customer. Right? So just selling hardware also will not work. Like, ऐसा नहीं कि hardware we are the only ones who are developing it. West में people had developed crawler robots, right? But the reason it did not pick up very well in India is because hardware को operate करने के लिए जो knowledge की ज़रूरत है and the kind of accessories that I talked about that enable the hardware to actually solve the problem of the customer, that was missing. So we said right from the beginning that we will sell our products, but at places necessary we will also provide service in the hardware itself, right? So from that angle, we were able to get into customers' sort of place very, very easy.
Right.
And then when we got the software, that service model was like sort of by default there. Right. So I think, but honestly, I think while we had some of the early success in this, we're still trying to figure out what is a long-term sustainable model for us. right? Right now, we sell the products. With some of the private players, we do end-to-end service also, and we do the service for the software also, right? So all of these three business models are there. We're trying to see if to a certain extent where there is awareness in the market and the ecosystem also develops where we are able to outsource the entire hardware service part to somebody else, we will just limit ourselves to two business model, where one will be on the hardware side, you just sell the products, and on the software side you make recurring revenues. That's the larger goal that we would want to build, and this would too still will be very different revenue streams, but that is okay. That could be the two businesses that we would have ultimately for us.
Yeah, it's kind of an inescapable fact, I think, of the business that you run, because the two examples I mentioned earlier, right, Orangewood and Ethereal, have had similar journeys as well, right? So take the case of Ethereal. I mean, they made these CNC machines, right, and to prove the use case of these CNC machines, they had to like produce stuff, right? So today, I mean, they have this platform where you can request things and they will use their CNC machines to sort of do these things. I think in the future, maybe like selling your machines to other entrepreneurs, like a franchisee sort of a model or something like that could evolve. But now I think it's inescapable fact of running the business, right? One aspect of on the business side of things, on the sales side of things, is selling to the government, right? And I've had the unique opportunity of selling to the government and dealing with the stuff, right? I mean, and it's painful, right? I mean, for what it's worth, that machinery itself is slow. There are so many checks and balances that at the end of it, you feel like, is it even worth it, and so on, right? What are some things that you have realized as like hacks or principles in terms of selling to the government?
Sure. I think for us, fortunately or unfortunately, we do not have a choice. Right? We do not have a choice to not sell to the government, because a significant chunk of the whole utility system is still managed by the government, right? So that way we had to get in. I think the hacks wise, a couple of things that worked well for us, right? One was that we focused a lot on bureaucracy. Right, the bureaucrats who were there, like IS officers, who were the commissioners of each city, because at a city level they are able to make those decisions. They are able to say that, okay, if the technology is good, and they're pretty smart people, right? They understand, they grasp the technology very, very well. So, and they are to a certain extent, I would say, risk takers as well. Like they cannot go a lot high on the monetary side in terms of giving you a contract, but early pilots may, if they're convinced, they'll give you a small order, 5 lakhs, 6 lakhs, 7 lakhs, and so on. So that was one strategy that we did, and that has worked out quite well for us. Like most of the cities, we are able to approach the IS officers, the commissioners who are there. They look us as young people trying to do something for the country, and then they say, okay, let's give you a chance, right? And of course, you have to build a relationship with the engineers also there and show that we really care, we understand the system, but that at least solves for the entry point in some sense. So that is one thing that has worked well for us. Second has been, like I said, the relationships, right? Since the very beginning, I had taken that effort to like spend time with people on the sort of government side to share with them what technology can do. Not as a salesman, not as a person who is selling my product, but as to just general evangelizer of technology, to say that if you can bring technology, irrespective of whose product you use or what kind of problem you use it for, it can actually do things better for you in terms of saving time, in terms of saving costs, in terms of hassle, and so on. So that way there was a trust built with some of the people who sort of helped us get to the right platforms. So for example, right now we sort of have some entry with the ministries at the state level, at the center as well, with Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Ministry of Jal Shakti, where they value the opinions that we bring, right? There are organizations who are project management unit for the government, and their senior officials know that like we walk the talk in terms of technology usage, right? So that has been a great thing. We have been able to, there are like very senior industrialists, or like let's say the senior leadership of these companies like Suez and so on, who will go to platforms and say that Solinas worked for us and it was good.
Right.
So that you are able to solve a trust deficit there very well, because government.
So you're seen as a domain expert and not simply as a vendor.
Yes. Right. That is very important, because see, government may be, people ultimately are human, right? They want to solve their problems. It's just that they are a part of the system that doesn't let them take a lot of risks. Because government may, if you be at a position of employee there, you're not rewarded for taking risks, but you're
Yeah.
punished for any sort of
Absolutely.
failure that you've had.
Yeah.
So in that position, it becomes very difficult for you to give chances to any newcomer,
Right.
Because even in hardware, right, you have a lot of unbaked products that will come to you. कैसे करोगे उसको and all of that. So if you have trust built in across various aisles and people are recommending saying कि यार इसका product मैंने try किया है, you can try this out, you have that leverage there. So that was the second thing that we were able to do. Third thing that kind of helped us very well, and second part mein, honestly, I think the IITM ecosystem helped us a lot, like going through some of the mentors who made a connect, like that. Third thing that worked out well for us was storytelling, branding up to some extent, right? That we were always communicating about the social impact that we wanted to create. There were a couple of media coverages about the problem that we were trying to solve, the awards that we won, coming on Shark Tank, getting award from chief ministers, prime minister. So that kind of helped us also get visibility. So when we would go to people, some cases maybe people would be like, "Arey, I've seen you this place." Right? There is some government event workshop happening, and let's say you get invited as a speaker. It sort of has an impact. So, for example, last year, I think, when the finance minister sort of launched the budget for water and sanitation, there was a budget webinar that was happening on this mission of Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, which is every sort of home with a tap water. And they were looking for domain experts across various segments. The Prime Minister was very clear that he needed bureaucrat, sort of industrialist, startup to come in. And through some reference, right, purely like sort of, I think, like by chance, one of the mentors got to know from the ministry that they're looking for some startup. He said that Divanshu is working there. Why don't you sort of try talking to him? They asked for my profile, went through a bit of interviewing there, and they said, "ठीक lag raha hai," right? So I was able to come on a webinar for like a Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, which was inaugurated by the PM, and like I felt that I did not fit there, right? Because all of the stalwarts of like experts in water and sanitation were there, right, from industrialists to bureaucrats there. And you are a like young startup person, 2-3 year old into the ecosystem, talking in that webinar saying, how do you think we can achieve Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, right? So I think those things really helped, because then you can sort of show that off also, saying that, sir, I was there, right? You can show the agenda of government, right? PMO or the ministry saying that देखो दिवांशु नाम लिखा हुआ है वहाँ पर, right? And Solinas नाम लिखा हुआ पर. So that kind of has a good impact. So I think these are the three things that we do, and we continue to do that, right? That has helped us penetrate into the government a bit.
Yeah. No, being seen as more than your product, right, is such a valuable thing. I mean, even if you're in SaaS or something, right? I mean, whatever it is you're trying to do, whether it is sales productivity or, you know, accounting efficiency or whatever, right? I mean, if you are known for that problem, right, and your prospects are seeking you out, your opinion to understand more about it, I mean, that's the highest level, I think, right? Because if they trust you with a solution, then they'll trust you with your product as well. Right?
And then it's very long term also, right?
Yeah,
it's not a transactional relationship.
Exactly. What's it like, you know, being part of some of these schemes and government policies and whatnot, right? Because I'm sure that there's a huge overlap between Swachh Bharat, for example, or, you know, some of the stuff that the urban housing affairs ministry and so on do and so on. So what kind of support have you got from the government? If you can talk about that a little bit.
So I think I'll talk about the good part and the not so great part, right? So the good part is that the moment like ministry launches a scheme which is relevant to your sector, it tells the world that this is a tangible problem to solve, right? एक validation मिलता है उस चीज़ का. And again, I often, like when I'm giving my pitch, I talk about the 3 things that have happened for India very well, which has enabled startups like us to come in, which would not have happened like 2 decades back. Is 1, privatization, like O&M players like Suez, Veolia, L&T coming in. Second is policy. The moment government came and said there is a Ministry of Jal Shakti, everybody understood that water and sanitation are the problems that are important and we need to solve. That's a priority. Third is they walked the talk with saying investments.
Right.
Like launch schemes like Amrut, Smart City, Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, Swachh Bharat Mission. Poured in lakhs of crores in that to make it a reality. Right. That opened up a lot of sort of interest around that sector.
Yeah. No, I think Swachh Bharat was the first scheme that was announced, right? Even before Jandan and so on. Right. And I had a hard time trying to tell people how much of a trickle-down effect it is, right? Because I think us urban folks in cities like kind of don't value that as much,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You live in your housing societies and townships, and you don't kind of realize that everything from healthcare to, you know, some of the social circumstances are all
Yeah, linked
product
with
of
sanitation.
sanitation,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes. Yeah.
So yeah,
So
sorry.
so that way, na. So that way, what happened was when central government like allocated budgets for that, because yeah, at a city level, na, the reason a lot of times they're not able to adopt innovation also because there's no budget, right? They're running in losses. Water is a free product. They're not making money on that, right? So now they have a lot of cities have started charging for water, but otherwise municipalities net are running in losses. So the only time they are able to adopt innovation is when there is a scheme, central government is pulling in money, state government is putting in money, there is a multilateral bank like ADB, World Bank putting in money for a project and like that, right? So उस case में when central government is actually doing these schemes, we benefit from doing those pilots.
Right.
That is a standard way. So there is a budget allocation that for these innovations something could be done. A very good thing that has been done by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, right, is when they launched this mission Amrut, they put clear guidelines on what are the parameters that you wanted to solve for. And in that, if you are able to align with them, you're able to immediately get a contract. Other thing that Tara ma'am did, Tara ma'am is the sort of very senior bureaucrat who is the head of the entire Amrut mission, and one of the fabulous, phenomenal IS officers that I've had a chance to interact with. Great. She said, I am going to support startups, right? I'm believer in technology, and I believe that technology needs to come in this segment. She said, she launched this thing called Startup Challenge, where she said, as we select startups through, like, of course, the sort of merit means, and once the startup gets selected, we give them 20 lakhs. Right? Because the challenge is that while central government can allocate budget for the cities, that final decision making of whether the cities give you money is still theirs. Like water and sanitation is still a municipal subject. You cannot go to central government and say कि मुझे बड़ा tender दे दो, वो नहीं होता, right? So it is still a city based or state based subject. But what she did was we said कि from the center will give you that 20 lakhs, and we will help you connect with one of the Amrut cities, and we say that okay, you don't have to worry about money, you don't have to pay them anything, just give them operational support, and the entire money will be paid by us. Right? And they ended up giving 5 lakhs as advance also. Like government में advance नहीं मिलता, right?
Exactly.
So like clearly walking the talk on supporting startups,
Right.
and that was phenomenal, right? And now that the ministry is also trying to sort of develop on that, saying that of the first few startups that were selected, the ones who had successful case studies, 20 of them, 25 of them, we will double the sort of money that they gave for piloting, right? So I think some of these things really helped us a lot get that visibility, right? Abhi policy ban raha hai for drink from tap, and they're actually, some of the people call us to say, is this okay? Do you want to introduce some of the technologies there? Not to sort of focus on your product, but generally if you want to talk about the ecosystem. And I think that's a great thing, right? Government where people are coming to you saying that, okay, we value the technology, do you want to sort of add value? I think it's a great thing for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, yeah. Those are the great things. You said not so great as well.
Not so great, I think, would be, again, the thing that I said, right? Despite the budget allocation by the center,
Right.
the actual support has still to come by the city.
Right.
So if they are not able to sort of give you money beyond the pilot contract, you will not be able to do much.
Right.
That is one. Two, a lot of times there are challenges and losses, transmission loss, leakage from what the center is trying to do and what it ends up coming to the cities. So for example, under the smart city scheme, there was a sort of good procurement policy that was framed for startups, where cities could give a contract to a startup based on the problem statement without having to go through the tender process up to 20 lakhs. That's a clearly laid guideline from the center. Most of the cities don't even know about it, right? We used to go to the cities and say, "Yare 20 lakh ka contract mil sakta hai, yaar. Matlab we can do this," and they were like, "How do we know that?" We said, "There is a letter." They're like, but we do not know the process. How do we apply for this money? How do we get? So that while the policy exists somewhere,
right,
the implementation around it is quite unclear at times. So wahan par also you're not able to take the benefit of that very well because it goes through a lot of process and people may not be aware. Right? So these are the 2-3 things that are not so great because, and I think rather than being pessimistic about it, let me also say that I think there is hope. Things are getting better. They may take their own time because of the system that is there. But I think things are going towards the better.
I mean, hopefully, right? Also, I feel like India is such a large and complex country, right? I mean, it's like the second order impact of some of the stuff that
Yeah.
people do is crazy, right? It's very hard to control these things. And also, I really like the focus on startups, right? I mean, because I think definitely you have to democratize some of these problems to a larger base of people, for sure, right? I mean, this 5-year planning commission types, Soviet style top down approaches
Yeah.
cannot really work
Cannot work.
at
Yeah.
our scale,
Lot
right?
of
I mean,
context.
something
Yeah.
that we've proven as well, right? So how are you taking all of this beyond India? Because I'm sure that there's a huge market, let's say for example in Southeast Asia,
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
right, or in Africa, where too, I mean, maybe the city municipalities have not evolved to a degree where this is a solved problem,
Correct.
and
Correct.
also affordability is a key part, right? So they can't like really
Go to
import
European.
those
Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
machines from US or Europe, right? So what is the plan to take it outside of India?
So we're like, quite on spot. We are actually just in the process of expanding to Southeast Asia and Middle East.
Right.
Right. Africa not so yet because we have not figured out the sort of ways and means there.
Right.
But I think Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia hold a huge opportunity for us because also technology point of view, say as Indians, we are very good at building technology, and we are good at providing the service that US and Europe may not be able to provide, and we are cheaper also, affordable, right, from that perspective. So I think the opportunities for us are quite good there. We can do a lot of great stuff. We have been able to find reliable partners also in this journey who will help us go there. So for example, last year we won this award by Imagine H2O, which is a accelerator program based in Singapore, who gave us the award for best startup ready for Southeast Asian expansion. And now
Wow.
they're helping us connect with Indonesian markets, sort of Cambodia and Philippines and so on, to explore some implementation there. Similarly, there are organizations like, let's say, water.org, ADB, and so on, who want to sort of support technologies in these areas. So they are likely to sort of fund your pilots to do that. So that's why we think that Southeast Asia could be a very good focus for us. It works very similar to the Indian market, right? Middle East holds a even larger opportunity from that lens because they have paying capacity.
Right.
And if they have something of quality, they'll pay for that. So if you're able to give them right products, if you're able to provide them the service, we think that there is good potential in Middle East as well.
Awesome. So what are some of the other things that you are excited for, in the coming 12 to 18 months time frame?
I think from a business front, I am very excited about our expansion in industrial segment. We have not explored that a lot. I think we would like to go all in into that segment. Right, we see a lot of scope in that because industries are very proactive. We've gotten a couple of contracts from there, and the ROI is great. So that's something that we want to do. Second is a couple of high-end R&Ds that we are taking on that people have not solved for yet. So, for example, recently ACT grants supported us to develop horizontal sewer cleaner. Right, that has not sort of people have not solved for that in India and a large part of the world as well. So we have this 9 to 10 months to sort of take a shot at that and build it. And similarly, the AI solution that we are building, we think that can be a game changer for India because think about it, if we are able to actually predict some of the problems that would come in these underground assets, a real life example of that could be, let's say, flooding in any of the cities, right? If you know the sort of assets of like sewer assets to the extent which part of the city is more likely to get choked, you can deploy your strengths of maintenance towards that particular part rather than doing it evenly distributed, right? And that will help you fight these problems in a better way. If you're able to know that these part of the drainages of get choked because there is mixing or some blockages, if you solve that before the rain comes, your flooding sort of goes down. Right. So there are a lot of things that you can solve through prediction. So I think one is, of course, expansion into business. Second is this R&D. And I think the third would be just the team itself. I think we have now gone from like 15-20 member team to now being a 70 member team at Solinas, and will continue to grow to more than 100, let's say. So how does the whole culture of the team evolve? And you ensure that you still have gotten the right people, they're still motivated and passionate as the same sort of 10-15 member team that it used to be. I think I'm quite excited about how that is going to play out.
Yeah. The kind of people that you work with will really define the journey, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they'll keep you excited about the problems that you can solve. And always, I mean, it's always like like way beyond what you can think of, right? I mean, people are amazing that way. They'll push you to, things that you are not like truly, I mean, you can't even imagine, right? You've had a journey of like about 3-4 years with Solinas, and then, before that with Involve and so on, right? So you've seen a bunch of this stuff. What is your advice to someone who might have an idea, wants to start up, let's say particular to, hardware or so on, right? What are those things that they should learn, they should be prepared for, that has kind of helped you as well?
I think first I'll talk about the general aspect of somebody trying to start, right? I've always felt that people should figure out their value add, right? Just having an idea will not create a differentiator, because let's accept it, unless you are really creating a deep tech patentable product which comes out of 4 or 5 years of research, nothing is something that people haven't thought about before, right? So the key lies in execution. So if you have an idea, really ask yourself what is the value add that you can do in making it work. And if you have a very strong yes for that, whether you are good at product development or whether you are good at operations or you're good at sales, then only you should get in there. Right? Otherwise, first go towards learning. So, right. So I always see myself in this journey of learning and value creation. That if you're not creating value right now, you first learn. And then, of course, if you have learned, then think about value creation. That's something that I think people should do. Second would be really know your market well, right? So let's say if you have a product that you think can work, or if you think that there's a problem that you need to solve, don't just go from your perspective, but get validation of that also, right? Know the deeper insights of that. I think all great entrepreneurs that I've seen, that I sort of find my inspiration from, they know their industry very well. They know, like, they would have an insight of what I should do that would actually work in the industry 5 years, 10 years down the line, right? So they have those insights. Like Peter Thiel talks about what are some few truths that what are some truths that very few people agree with you on, right? So I find that very, very powerful, because you need to find some of these insights that like very few people know about, that gives you that operating leverage, right? So I'm a big fan of leverage that way. So you need to have that leverage, right?
That leverage also gets developed, I feel, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
of course. Yeah.
There is so much that you can learn from reading, talking to people, etc. A lot of this unique leverage also gets developed from executing.
Absolutely. So that was like sort of, first is of course like value add, second is this creating this leverage. And coming specifically to hardware, I think truly learning this journey of iteration, prototyping and implementation, right? You need to get the first product out where you feel that it will decently be okay, and you have to be okay with failures also. Like there are countless times that we have developed something and put it into field and it has not worked, and then I'm looking at the customer is looking at me and I'm like, sir, really sorry, just I'm really sorry. You just like apologize wholeheartedly and say that, sir, sorry, I'll come back again and solve it for you.
Right.
And it is okay if there are some people who say that no, I will not give you a second chance, but there are large enough pool who will say that, okay, guys, come back again, right? Because the problem is still unsolved. Right? So that is there. And the last bit of entrepreneurship, I think, is think about building relationships. Don't be transactional into this, right? When you are with it, it's a long game. Entrepreneurship is a marathon, right? Whether it is going into sales or building a team, go from that sense of building that relationship, being fair about things that you're doing. I think that from a culture lens, from an attitude lens, is very, very important to get into entrepreneurship.
Right. Yeah, I mean, people severely underestimate two things, right? How hard it is eventually going to be, and how long it's going to take for any meaningful outcomes, right? Because
absolutely.
I feel like all of us have this image of someone like Zuckerberg or something coding something in his dorm room and then instantly becoming famous, right? I mean, that's not the case. Zuckerberg himself has been at the helm for like 20 years now, right? I mean, come to think of it, right? So before we wind up, any books or podcasts that you would recommend?
Oh yeah, I think podcast, something that is very much right now there is Nikhil Kamat's.
Oh yeah,
I think in a sort of stage of 10 minutes, 15 minutes thing, these long hour podcasts of 3-4 hours where you actually deep down into the industry with some sort of stalwarts. I think it's a great learning exercise. Similarly, like Barbershop with Shantanu. Like I had a chance to listen to Ashish Mohapatra from Off Business. And in a very different perspective. Like you might disagree on some of these points, but very different perspective and very spot on, right? So podcasts, these are the couple of ones that I sort of have gotten hooked to right now. In terms of books, I just finished reading Never Split the Difference. It's a book on negotiation and like sort of talking to people. I loved that book, right? I love the perspective, the way that it teaches you a lot about conversations, listening, and so on, right? So that was there. From a philosophical standpoint, I think Almanac of Naval Ravikant, that's a good read. From a tactical point of view, I think this book, Andy Grove, who is the CEO of Intel.
High Output Management.
High Output Management. That I think for me is a book that I keep by my side. It's a crash course in management.
Right there somewhere.
So High Output Management, yes, Andy Grove. I think it's phenomenally written, right? About the way
and
you
think
manage
about it, right? I mean, it was written in the 90s, I suppose.
And it's just phenomenal. I think these are a couple of books that I keep with me as a, not just as a one-time read, but also something that I think I would go back to again and again. And so I think this would be my couple of best reads.
Awesome. Man, this was a fascinating conversation, right? We went through many detours and, rabbit holes, right? Certainly, I mean, the kind of work that you're doing, I mean, we could talk for hours afterwards also. But thanks for doing this. I think it makes me very optimistic about India and I think we have so many capable people in India, right? I think we can solve all of our problems ourselves, right? So
I always tell this about India, that it's a good thing that you are part of India, because you don't have a sort of scarcity of problems to solve for.
Exactly. Best time to be an entrepreneur, right?
Best time to be an entrepreneur,
So thanks so much, Divanshu, for making the time again, and wish you all the best for everything that you have coming up.
Thank you so much, Roshan. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the Startup Operator Podcast. If you liked our content, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'll see you on another episode with another fascinating story and a fantastic entrepreneur.